The F-14 Tomcat wasn't just a jet, it was an icon. From dominating the skies to stealing the show in Hollywood, this fighter changed everything we thought we knew about air power. When it came to creating the F-14 Tomcat, Grumman Aircraft wasn't building just another fighter jet. They were crafting a solution to a major problem. By the late 1960s, the U.S. Navy was desperate for an air superiority fighter capable of countering high-speed threats posed by Soviet bombers and missiles. Their first attempt, the F-111B, was a disaster. It was a lesson in over-promising and under-delivering. The aircraft was overweight, sluggish, and fundamentally unsuitable for carrier operations. After its humiliating failure, the Navy knew something revolutionary was needed. Enter the Grumman F-14, a fighter designed to outpace anything it faced, yet graceful enough to land on the tight decks of aircraft carriers amidst the chaos of a moving sea. Bolstered by the combat data pouring out of Vietnam and decades of high-speed dogfighting expertise, Grumman crafted a jet that prioritized adaptability and cutting-edge technology. When the F-14 took its first flight in December 1970, its sleek, variable sweep wings and twin tails didn't just look futuristic, they were built to solve real-world problems no other aircraft at the time could handle. Even its name had a story. Tomcat wasn't just a continuation of Grumman's feline-named legacy, like the Hellcat and Wildcat. It was a subtle nod to Admiral Thomas Connolly, the Navy officer who championed the program. Without Connolly's advocacy for building something functional rather than politically pleasing, the F-14 might have ended up as just another unspectacular project. But instead, it became a masterpiece, one born of necessity, ambition, and just the right amount of risk taken. If there's one feature that sets the F-14 apart visually, is those wings. The moment they fully extended, the Tomcat transformed into something that seemed otherworldly. Variable geometry wasn't just a design gimmick. It was the secret weapon behind the aircraft's unmatched versatility. With its wings spread wide at 20 degrees, the F-14 could maximize lift, making it steady, forgiving, and manageable for those nail-biting carrier landings. But flip a switch, and those same wings would sweep back to a sharp 68 degrees, turning the Tomcat into an aerodynamic spearhead designed for supersonic intercepts at over twice the speed of sound. The brilliance of this feature lay in its automatic control, an onboard computer adjusted wing positioning in real time, ensuring the aircraft maintained ideal performance across different speeds and altitudes. Pilots didn't have to fiddle with complicated mechanics. The F-14 systems eliminated the guesswork, allowing them to focus on the mission at hand, whether they were dogfighting at close quarters or streaking skyward to engage high-altitude targets. The swing wings made the aircraft unstoppable. And it wasn't just about performance. It was about survivability. No better example exists than the 1991 event where a Tomcat landed safely despite losing over half its right wing in a collision. The robust design of the swing wing mechanism allowed the crippled jet to glide into land like nothing had gone wrong. That level of engineering turned what could have been a fatal flaw into a mark of resilience. For all its futuristic tech, the F-14 Tomcat never forgot the importance of practical, battle-tested reliability. The F-14 was a jet fighter, sure, but on another level entirely. It was a technological marvel, a hunter armed with one of the most advanced radar systems of its day. The AN/AWG-9 radar wasn't just a tool for pinpointing enemy fighters. It was a game changer in how air combat was waged. This was the Cold War after all, a conflict defined as much by data and detection as by speed. And with the AWG-9, the Tomcat became one of the deadliest sentinels in U.S. airspace. This radar was no ordinary scanner. It boasted an unparalleled ability to track up to 24 targets simultaneously while handling multiple engagements. Imagine enemy aircraft flying hundreds of miles away. confident in their ability to remain undetected, and then finding themselves illuminated on the F-14's radar screen. At nearly 200 miles, the AWG-9 could detect, lock onto, and guide 6 AIM-54 Phoenix missiles to separate targets. These weren't just numbers. They were capabilities no other aircraft could rival at that time. The Phoenix missile itself was essentially a guided hunter, carrying its own radar. And the combination of these technologies meant that a squadron of Tomcats could potentially halt an entire bomber formation without even coming into visual range. But the radar's capabilities weren't stuck in the 1970s. Later models of the F-14 received the AN/APG-71 radar, an upgrade that refined accuracy, improved processing speed, and added resistance to jamming attempts by enemy forces. This kept the Tomcat relevant long after many of its contemporaries had faded into obscurity. The brilliance of this system and the people operating it made it possible for the Tomcat to shine in Cold War missions, where spotting and neutralizing threats without being seen was the ultimate game of cat and mouse. Whether guiding long-range missiles or assisting in precision targeting for bomb drops in its later years, the F-14's radar system ensured it wasn't just competitive, it was untouchable. Paired with a well-trained radar intercept officer, the Tomcat became a force to be reckoned with, even in scenarios other aircraft might hesitate to enter. This wasn't just tech, it was strategy, precision, and dominance built into every part of the jet. The F-14 Tomcat didn't earn its legendary status by sitting idly on carrier decks. It proved its mettle across some of the most high-stakes conflicts of the late 20th century. Its combat credibility was firmly established during the 1981 Gulf of Sidra incident, a confrontation that showcased exactly what the Tomcat was built for. Facing 2 Libyan Su-22 fitters that launched missiles at them, 2 F-14s from VF-41 Black Aces responded with swift precision, downing both enemy jets using AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles. This wasn't just a victory for the aircraft, it was a statement. The Tomcat had just marked the U.S. Navy's first air-to-air kills since the Vietnam War, solidifying its reputation as a fleet defender. 8 years later, in the second Gulf of Sidra incident, the Tomcat would again demonstrate its dominance. This time, it was 2 MiG-23 floggers that came up against the U.S. Navy's finest, only to be outmaneuvered and taken down in an intense 8-minute encounter. The F-14 proved not just its lethality, but also its tactical superiority, with crews utilizing its cutting-edge AWG-9 radar to lock onto threats long before the MiGs could react. The Gulf War presented a new kind of challenge for the Tomcat. No longer focused solely on air-to-air combat, it took on escort roles and precision reconnaissance missions. While most Iraqi aircraft fled at the mere detection of the Tomcat's radar, its presence allowed coalition forces to operate unchallenged in the skies. It wasn't until February 1991 that the F-14 scored its only kill of the Gulf War, an Iraqi Mi-8 helicopter. Yet, its significance lay in the thousands of sorties flown to protect and support ground forces. The Tomcat was much more than a dogfighter. It was a multi-mission powerhouse. What set the F-14 apart wasn't just its ability to dominate dogfights, it was its versatility, proving that a fighter could be much more than a one-dimensional war machine. Take its Tactical Airborne Reconnaissance Pod System, or TARPS, for example. Introduced in the late 1970s, the TARPS pod transformed the Tomcat into an intelligence asset that could capture high-resolution images of enemy terrain, positions, and movements. This capability was vital during U.S. Navy missions over Lebanon during the 1980s, where Tomcats often dodged surface-to-air missiles to gather life-saving intelligence. By the 1990s, the Tomcat evolved yet again to meet the demands of modern warfare. The addition of low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared for night system, known as Lantern, catapulted it from a high-flying interceptor to a deadly ground strike platform. With the Lantern pod, the F-14 F-14 gained the ability to deliver laser-guided bombs with pinpoint accuracy, earning it the nickname Bombcat. Whether it was striking rebel targets in Bosnia or executing precision attacks during the Iraq War, the Tomcat proved it could take on any challenge. But its adaptability wasn't just limited to hardware. The crews navigating these missions played a crucial role in redefining how the F-14 was used. Radar intercept officers, RIOs, became masters not only of tracking enemy fighters, but also of coordinating reconnaissance and ground support, positioning the Tomcat as a critical asset in every theater it operated in. From the air-to-air dominance of its early years to the precision strike missions of its final decades, the F-14 wasn't just a fighter, it was a solution. How does a jet become a cultural phenomenon? The F-14 found its fame not just on the battlefield, but also on the big screen. Its starring role in the 1986 blockbuster Top Gun cemented it as a symbol of American air power and daring. With Tom Cruise's Maverick at the controls, the Tomcat dazzled audiences with its high-speed maneuvers, dramatic afterburner takeoffs, and heart-pounding dogfights. But what viewers might not realize is that those jaw-dropping stunts were no Hollywood exaggeration. The real-life U.S. Navy worked closely with filmmakers to ensure the F-14 got its proper spotlight. Top Gun wasn't just entertainment, it was recruitment gold. The Navy saw a spike in enlistment following the film's release, as young aviation enthusiasts dreamed of strapping into the cockpit of a Tomcat. The aircraft itself became a star, its sleek silhouette gracing posters, toys, and memorabilia. Even decades later, the F-14's mystique is alive and well, with its cameo in Top Gun Maverick sparking a wave of nostalgia for its glory days. The F-14's role in Top Gun wasn't just about cool factor. It showcased the immense skill and precision required to fly such an advanced machine. Every supersonic turn, every afterburner roar, and every carrier landing was a testament to the engineering brilliance behind the Tomcat and the dedication of the pilots who flew it. It wasn't just a plane, it was an icon. By the early 2000s, the F-14 had become a victim of its own success. Designed in the 1960s to combat Soviet threats, the Tomcat's complexity and maintenance costs became increasingly difficult to justify in a post-Cold War world. The F-18 Hornet, with its simpler design and multi-role capabilities, arrived as a more cost-effective alternative, and the Navy made the tough decision to retire the Tomcat. The final flight came on September 22, 2006, when VF-31 Tomcatters celebrated the aircraft's farewell. For those who had piloted or maintained the F-14, it was the end of an era, an emotional goodbye to a machine that embodied speed, power, and American ingenuity. The aircraft left U.S. Navy service, but its legacy didn't fade. Many were preserved in museums across the country, standing as towering symbols of aviation history. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Iran, having purchased Tomcats in the mid-1970s under a very different geopolitical climate, continues to operate a handful of them to this day. Despite sanctions and limited parts, Iranian engineers have managed to keep the F-14 flying, testament to the durability and ingenuity of its design. Today, the F-14 Tomcat lives on not just in history books or museums, but in the awe of every pilot, engineer, and aviation enthusiast who dreams of the era when Tomcats ruled the skies. Its reputation as the fighter that could do it all remains unmatched. It wasn't just retired, it ascended into legend. Thanks for flying with us through the story of the unstoppable F-14 Tomcat. If you love this ride, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and drop a comment on your favorite F-14 moment. See you in the next mission.